If all the terrible things that Murkoff has thrown in the way of the Regents weren't enough, there is still a single trial left for them to undertake in the third and final program. If you haven't already, go and check out the previous 2 breakdowns of the first 2 programs, Snitches Get Stitches and Grind the Bad Apples, as we will now be continuing on with the Cleanse the Orphans program. And with this program, we are reintroduced to the horrors of Mother Gooseberry, as she has been moved from Fuddleland to be the prime asset at the orphanage area that the Cleanse the Orphans takes place in. And with that, let's break it all down. After a quick wind down in the sleeping quarters with your fellow regents, you'll be placed back onto the train system by the Murkoff employees. Dr. Eastman once again gives us some words of advice, speaking about how even education and faith must follow mandates, and reinforcing the children will learn obedience. A similar lesson that was learnt in the Grind the Apples program. He says to shape them young and they'll be Murkoffs for life. Very creepy if you ask me, and some words pop up on the screen explaining some of the core principles. No drugs, no rebellion, and no lust. So I guess Easterman draws the line between those and straight up murder and brainwashing, but sure. Also, once again for clarity, the children mentioned are just mannequins living their best life. Once we arrive, we get to see the set that has been created for the third program, and this time it is an orphanage. If you play through the introduction sequence of Outlast Trials, you might have visited this place already. But this time we return with friends, and as you could imagine, from the outside of the orphanage, it actually doesn't look that bad. But once you get inside, wowee, it's a mess. And whoever decided on the interior design needs to get fired, because holy crap, those things are some nightmare fuel paintings. Our first objective is to start turning off some of the security systems, in order to open the gates around the orphanage. More importantly, the children's dormitories, as they have other technical tuners to unlock the gates to the outside area. Once we arrive at the dorms, we can find mannequins placing their heads in piles of sugar and baking soda. Totally not drugs of any kind. And also this thing, which I can honestly say gave me about 3 heart attacks as I ventured throughout this area. And speaking of heart attacks, we got Mother Gooseberry again, wreaking havoc in rooms and hallways of the orphanage, which I must say is probably even more scary than the carnival, since it's now in much smaller spaces and corridors, instead of the open areas of the carnival. After doing all the tuning, the regents open up the gate to the classrooms, which will require you to go throughout the classrooms changing the film on the projector to some classic Murkoff propaganda. I have to be really selective about what footage I show throughout this, because the entire orphanage is filled with nun mannequins in very risque attire and positions, so I apologise if this part is a little chopped up. Anyway, once the propaganda has been placed in the classrooms for the children to enjoy, it is now our job to head back to the reception desk and open up the gate that will lead us out to the chapel. And this area is where things are about to get really crazy for the regents, and what is quite possibly the craziest thing I have done or seen in a horror game. And for YouTube's sake, I will need to blur much of it, but I'll try to explain the best I can for you. Inside the chapel, you could easily be mistaken at first for its very wholesome scene. Disco lights while child mannequins dance and play between the pews. It's only when the lights turn on that we realise the true horror of the situation. This is an individual that is viewed as a non-believer, and in this case we aren't talking about God, but instead Murkoff. He is tied up at the cross, and the regents are tasked with collecting the saw handles while also turning on the generators to power the mannequins. And once we arrive, the regents need to chop his legs off, essentially. Trust me, it's really graphic, and Outlast really turned up the gross meter for this particular program. But once that's all finished, we need to turn on the mannequins, as they will have a big old dance in the fake blood and eat from the offerings that the regents just gave them. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Now it's time to flee the orphanage and head back to the facility to be judged and placed back into the sleeping quarters for a round of arm wrestling to cope with what just happened. Our job, however, is not over. We must head back for our next challenge, which is to feed the children. This will take us back to the orphanage, but instead of being inside the main building, we will make our way to the cafeteria, where all of the mannequins have been placed, ready for their Monday night dinner. What is for dinner, you might ask? Well, let's just call it Mystery Meat Mondays. And we need to go around the outside areas and search for the main stock ingredient for our soup. In this case, it's bleach, which is an incredibly deadly and toxic concoction, probably even for mannequins. Once the bottles have been collected, we can take them back and fill the pot and eventually serve the food using the graciously set out pipeline that will take the soup straight to the tables. The mannequins will dance around with excitement, while the reagents will jump around flailing for their life as Mother Gooseberry is coming to murder them. We get out of there and are now only left with a single challenge left: foster the orphan, which will put us back at the orphanage, but this time we need to tune all of the frequencies to allow us to save the children from Mother Gooseberry and find them a new home. Or if you're me, just hide in the cafeteria freezer for 10 minutes while the other reagents get that job done for you. This is actual footage, by the way. It's not a still image. Remember folks, work smarter, not harder. Once we get the lobby gate open, it will allow the children to flee and also allow us to flee for the very last time. At least from a trial perspective. But that is the final challenge that Murkoff has in place for the Cleanse the Orphans program. That, however, is not the final thing that Regents will be tasked to do, but I will give you a small overview here. Essentially, there is a thing called Program X, which needs to be completed. It's redoing the same 3 programs again, but on a higher difficulty. But if you can finish everything, then you get to unlock enough tokens to be reborn. What does that mean? Well, we will be releasing the big main story explain video for Outlast Trials in the next few days. That will explain absolutely every background detail of the story from Outlast Trials, including the ending of the game. So, keep an eye out for that. If you enjoyed our little mini-series on the trials, please let us know down in the comments below, because we're trying out some new things to see if you guys enjoy them. Also, put the words mystery meat to show that you got to the end as well. Leave a like as it helps out a lot for the channel, and maybe even consider subscribing for more content in the future. Until next time, peace.